Hi everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Insights. No matter how long you've been in business or how many compliments you've received on your work, receiving criticism from your customers can be really difficult. And many people may become defensive rather than receptive to this kind of feedback. However, criticism can be gold when it comes to improving your products or services, keeping your customers or clients happy, and ultimately growing your business. To discuss how you can make the most of the feedback that you receive from customers, we are joined by Melanie Fischer, the Customer Experience Director at Xero in the UK. Melanie is a service-centric director with more than 20 years of experience in embedding cultures of continuous improvement to optimize customer acquisition, satisfaction, and retention. As such, she's really well placed to guide us on the path to appreciating feedback and responding in a way that will benefit us, our customers, and our teams. So thanks so much for joining.
Oh, really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for having me. Actually, that's in the Milton Keynes office today. It's been really cool to be able to visit the UK headquarters.
Yeah, great to have you here.
Awesome. So we've had a bit of a formal introduction to you, but maybe you can tell us something that might surprise people about you.
So, yeah, I'm been at Xero for a couple of years, and obviously, as you mentioned, been working 20 years plus. And I think one thing people probably didn't realise is before I started my endeavours to working, I actually wanted to be a fighter pilot. I don't tell people this very often. I was one of the first females in the cadets in my school, and I love planes. I love flying. People do know that bit about me because I travel a lot and love exploring the world up in the air. And yeah, that was my childhood dream. And I still would love to fly a plane. I used to fly small planes through the RAF, but I still love to.
Ah, that's so cool. Well, hopefully a dream you can still get to.
Hopefully, one day, one day.
That's super cool. I would never have predicted that.
No, people don't know that. So
this is always one of my favorite questions. So very different from flying planes.
Yep.
How did you come to be involved in customer experience?
Yeah, so I was working for a retailer, a UK retailer, John Lewis and Waitrose. And my background was in change. So I worked in financial services and continuous improvement and change. And the customer service centre there was going through a transformational change. And I happened to apply for a role. I didn't think I'd be successful because I didn't have that background. And they were like, yeah, actually, we could really do with someone in your skill set. So it was only a secondment. And I took the job and I absolutely loved it. Right from the get-go, the environment of being in a busy contact centre, the taking people through the rapid pace of change that you do in that environment, the listening and hearing to our customers, like being able to drive to work and listening to what our customers were saying. So I did it for about a year, and then I ended up taking a permanent role, and that is what I've been in since and never looked back. I've been working in different companies since. So I've worked obviously at Xero for a couple of years, post office before that, and I spent 10 years in retail environments. So it's nice to see the different elements of customer experience and different businesses, both ones where you're face-to-face with your customers, like many of our small businesses who are dealing with customers all the time, but also seeing what it's like from when you've got B2B or you're dealing with different customer environments as well. So yeah, I've seen a little bit of it all really. And now obviously more recently with small businesses and accountants and bookkeepers. And even that difference between how you support our accountants and bookkeepers compared to small businesses is different as well.
That's really interesting. So many different perspectives from all the different industries that you've worked in. Have you noticed sort of, I guess, similar trends, or surprisingly similar, I should say, between the different industries and the ways that customers interact with you as a customer experience person?
Yeah, I think there's similarities and differences. Yeah, even what we've just been seeing at Xero with the differences of what our partners need, our accounting partners versus our small businesses. We've been just recently experimenting in different channels. And what we've noticed is actually with our more complex queries, our partners are happy to wait. They're happy to kind of reach out to us for help, I want to get on with my day. I'm a busy accountant. You solve my problem and come back to me.
Yes.
Whereas our small businesses who are really, really busy, they want a quick answer. They want to be able to speak to somebody. They want that hand-holding, particularly if you're new to Xero or new to the business you've joined, or perhaps if you're shopping, you've never shopped with that retailer before. So what I found quite fascinating about the world of customer experience is how you evolve over time, and you have to constantly adapt to meet the changing needs of your customers. 20 years ago in our environment, actually when I joined Waitrose, it was very much email heavy. Like, customers were emailing and they were happy to wait 24 hours for your response. And now email as a channel is, as you know, it's declining, right?
Yeah.
People want to WhatsApp, people want to call you, people want to FaceTime and screen.
They want immediacy.
They want immediacy. Yeah, and trying to guide them to the channel that best suits their needs is probably one of the biggest challenges you have in customer experience, because we know that actually in that example, live chat might be the best channel for you. But the customer will generally pick their channel of preference rather than really think actually which is the best channel that suits the nature of my query.
Oh, very interesting. I suppose let's get back to the topic of feedback.
Yes. Voice of the customer is the kind of the lingo that I use in customer experience, but in a nutshell, it's customer feedback.
Awesome. Why do you think that people often struggle so much with receiving constructive criticism from their clients or from their customers? In terms of, well, I suppose in general, but like when you're working, whether as an accountant or a small business owner, and you get this kind of harsh feedback.
Yes.
Why do you think that people often struggle so much to respond in sort of an appropriate and constructive way rather than feeling defensive and upset with the customer?
It's very easy straight away when you read those negative reviews to think either, gosh, what have I done? Or why does that customer feel that way?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned fences. You sort of call it constructive feedback. Often people just think it as negative reviews, negative feedback. And I've spoken to a lot of small businesses and accountants actually who are quite scared to open up their feedback channels because they think, if I get one negative review, that's going to look really bad. And what would we do with it? And actually, I was speaking to an accounting partner recently, and I talked to them about the whole journey of going through, once you've started opening up the feedback, when you know what your customers are saying about you, when you understand, because they're going to think it whether they say it or not, right? So they're going to be thinking, well, and you hear the anecdotes. If you have a bad experience, you're going to tell 7 people. If you have a good, you only tell 1 or 2. And I always remind people of that. But if you're looking at those negative experiences, you can then do something about it. But if you don't know that they're happening, it's not in your control.
It's always better to know
It's
so that
always
you
better
can
to know.
respond to it. I mean, you can also look and say, oh, this one person was upset about something completely unreasonable.
Yep.
Okay, we maybe don't need to act on that. But if there are quite a few people that are all complaining that your website keeps crashing, it's probably good for you to know about
100%. And that's where the relationships come with like our product teams and be able to look at the trends and what customers are saying. But yeah, so you can deal with it in terms of the customer there and then. So being able to choose to respond or not, as you quite rightly said. I've got a small bit, another anecdote from a small business. My hairdresser, actually, she sent me a text message and said, oh, do you mind just jumping on and writing me a positive review? I've had a really negative one. Because she didn't really know kind of what to do about this negative review, she just immediately went to, actually, if I get 10 more positive reviews, that will help solve the problem. Because there's other ways around it. It's not always trying to respond and being defensive about that response.
Yes.
And people really look at reviews, right? When you look at ChatGPT and Gemini, it's pulling from Reddit and review sites.
Yeah.
So it's so important to be able to respond in an appropriate way. Like I sometimes will draft an email or draft my response, sleep on it, and think about actually how can I word it in a way, actually Gemini can really help with that as well. But how can I word it in a way that really showing empathy, trying to put yourself in those customers' shoes? Because in my world, often more things are going on for that customer than just the situation that they're displaying during their frustration.
Yeah, makes sense. I actually once left a very bad review for a post office that I'd been to that kept spamming me with all of these SMSs that I'd never signed up for. So I didn't know how to get through to them, and I left them this terrible review, and then they responded very promptly. They took me off that mailing list that I didn't want to be on.
Yeah.
And they said, "Here, we're so sorry, we've sorted it out. Would you mind taking your bad review down?" And I was like, well, that was quick. That was great. Yeah. So I deleted my review.
Yeah.
So that's also like a way that you can kind of turn from the other side, turn the customer around.
100%. And actually, those experiences that you turn around, sometimes you end up with a more loyal customer.
Yes.
I found particularly if you pick up the phone, you build a relationship and say, hey, I saw you didn't have a great experience. What can I do to make it right for you? And if you handle that in the right way, like you said, if you respond quickly, you really listen to what that customer's trying to tell you, then you can actually end up with somebody who's more likely to be loyal to your custom and your business. So yeah, it's really thinking about how you're going to handle that.
Yeah, and having that personal touch, I think, helps when you can show that you actually do care about their experience and you're sorry that they've encountered something bad.
Yeah, so another interesting thing is some people find it hard to say sorry. Some people think that saying sorry is taking responsibility that you've done something wrong. And as a business, that can be quite difficult, right? You don't necessarily agree with the customer that you are wrong because they might be asking, I don't know, for a refund and you're saying, well, my terms and conditions say that you're not entitled to one. Let's say your website goes down. And I always say you can be sorry for the experiences that they've been through. You don't need to be showing that it's necessarily your fault, but you can be sorry for the pain that it's caused them or the experiences. And I think just acknowledging that up front really helps to start to dissipate the situation before you get into that. Actually, what does it mean for you?
Makes sense. Sort of on that note, when it comes to apologizing, how do you kind of manage to apologize in a way that doesn't give you any sort of legal accountability? Like if it's something that wasn't really your fault, but you're apologizing for their bad experience.
Yeah.
How would you go about that?
Well, I think for me, it's often just understanding what the impact it has on them and apologizing for the impact that it has on them. So let's say where they were unable to process their payroll for their teams because there was an issue with HMRC. Like, I'm so sorry for the experience that extra work, that additional work that has created you, is not showing that I have caused that problem. You're really acknowledging the impact that has had on that customer, or whatever the impact might be. And this is where empathy, I think, comes in really well. And when you work in a world of customer experience, where being able to think about for the people dealing with the customers all the time, showing empathy, really listening, really understanding, and asking your customer questions is a really nice way to say sorry than just going into straight say, I apologize for the delay. You know, that kind of that very standard line of I apologize for any delay, and it just doesn't feel authentic. So I think saying sorry
for any inconvenience caused.
Yeah.
That just doesn't feel personal.
No,
that doesn't feel like you're actually sorry.
You feel like you're on a train, you know, and you're sat on a train and it's delayed and they come over I apologise when you don't actually care. But I'm sat here waiting. I'm now an hour late. I've missed my transfer. So yeah, being more personal and authentic, I think really helps.
Absolutely. And you spoke a bit about the idea of the voice of the customer instead of customer feedback. Could you maybe talk me through the idea behind why you call it that?
Yeah, sure. So there's two elements of voice of the customer in my mind. Is an amalgamation of all the feedback you receive. So in order to get your true customer voice, you're looking at, and you could get this feedback through a number of ways. So it might be through your review sites. It might be through, we do like a customer satisfaction survey at the end of our interactions. We also do what we call an NPS, a Net Promoter Score. So customers would rate how would they recommend us. And you'd gather all of this rich data and you'd understand actually what are the key themes that our customers really care about. So is it product ideas? Is it ease of access of support? And as an entirety, voice of the customer to me means the customer's in the room. So when you're talking about that with your teams, so let's say you're in a meeting with the product teams, you're in the meeting with customer service, you'd be imagining actually this is the customer being represented in the room and understanding what their pain points are, what we can do about it. And then the other element of customer voice of the customer that we'd look at is like, what are the things that they're contacting us about? Like nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to contact a company and spend hours on the phone and trying to explain what their problems are. So when you look at what are the trends are, so how many contacts have we had on, I don't know, let's call it late deliveries or issues issues accessing your website, or it might be something that if you own a coffee shop, what are the things that you're hearing from your customers, and how to bring those two data points together. Because if you can solve the root cause of the issue, then you know that customer's being represented in the room. So
Yes.
yeah.
I love that. It's a really nice way of putting it. The customer always being represented in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Some maybe returning to the idea of busy business owners trying to respond to customer feedback.
Yes.
If you're really busy, responding to feedback quickly can be quite tough.
Yes.
So how would you recommend sort of triaging or deciding which feedback to respond to first?
Yeah.
Like an email that you receive or
Yeah.
an online review, and how quickly do you think people should be responding to their customers?
And that's a really tricky one, right? Because if you are a small business owner and you've only got limited amount of time and resource to do that, generally you would probably want to focus on your public facing reviews first, not necessarily because that's the right thing from your prioritizing, you're kind of almost showing preferential treatment to somebody who would publicly
Right.
but at the same time, you've got to think about your reputation of your business. So I think for me, so if I take Trustpilot, I don't know, do you have that in South Africa as a website, Trustpilot?
Heard of it. I haven't used it.
It's like a review site.
Oh, okay.
Quite big in the UK. You're little, not so big in some of the, it's big in Australia actually, less so in the US. But it would be like it's similar to Reddit, where you've got a review site and customers are leaving reviews, and Trustpilot will give you an overall score against your business. Why is it important for small businesses? Because actually when customers go to choose an option to shop with, or they go to their local hairdresser, they might look on Trustpilot to read people's reviews. Now, what Trustpilot do is your score will also be relevant, not just to how many reviews you've got, but how quickly you respond to those reviews. So if you are engaging with websites like that, you would need to make sure you're responding quickly and you actually go for volume. So you want to get as many reviews as possible. So sometimes you'll see companies like leave on their business card, like a taxi driver, will leave us a Trustpilot review, and they'll really try and promote that. And of course, you want to try and promote it to the customers who you know are happy as well. So if you know it's been a great experience, be promoting that. But I think when it comes to receiving if you got an email in and a customer was complaining and you knew you couldn't handle it straight away, I think just an acknowledgement to say, hey, I've got your email, I'll give you a call tomorrow, or just that. And even if it is, let's say you can't then call them for a week, keeping in contact with that customer.
Yes.
So
showing that you've
so important.
seen their email and you are going to respond.
Exactly. And if for whatever reason you can't, or you've tried to get hold of them, rather than just leave them that voicemail, follow up in a couple of days and say, I still hear you. I've not forgotten about you. Can we book a call in the following? And most customers generally quite open to that. What they don't like is not hearing from you.
Yes.
So that would be my advice.
I think it's kind of like a Google review, like a lot of places that I've been to recently, like as I've left, say, a restaurant, they said, please, can you review us on Google?
Exactly the same. And I think really focusing where you want your review site to be. Like Google Maps, it's so easy for people to leave reviews on that, which is great from a customer lens, but not so good from a business lens. So it is really important to be asking for those reviews so you can stack up those positive reviews, because there's always going to be negative ones coming in there.
And again, like you said, people are more likely to report on their negative experiences than their positive.
It's a way for them to vent and get frustrations out.
Yeah.
And if you can give them other outlets to do that, even better.
Absolutely. Many issues for accountants may come down to things like pricing confusion or feeling unvalued. How do you think an accountant could strategically take a public complaint private? And is there a specific low-cost thing that they could offer to a customer who's been upset with something to turn that experience around?
Yeah. So pricing complaints are across the industry, right? Loads of people do not want to be faced with increasing prices, and what is important to demonstrate your customers is the value that you're giving them.
Yes.
Before you start, if you know you're going to put your prices up as an accountant, before you do that is going out with messages around, actually, have you thought about utilizing this feature? Can we? And trying to keep them, I would say, happy and engaged with your business before you know something negative is going to impact. And some of the low cost things that we would look at from a customer experience lens, and I've seen this actually across the industries I've worked in, is that personalization of, it might be a small thank you note. It might be something. I actually met a partner at an event recently, and he said, "Oh, I've been with Xero about 9 years." And I said, "Oh, well, that's a long time." Because I remember the first year I joined with Xero. I was new, and I was talking about a holiday I was taking in Scotland, and you sent me a book. One of my team, which was a long time ago, there was only a few people working for Xero at the time, a travel book, how to get around Scotland. And he says, "I've still got that book." It was probably £8-9 on Amazon when we sent it. So I still got that book, and I remember it being a really nice gesture of being accustomed to the conversations that I've been having with your team, and just that simple gesture of to say thank you for, and he's gone on to be one of our biggest partners. So I think, and you don't always want to do that straight after a negative conversation. I think where it's important is you're building that loyalty up front with your customers. So then when you do have those situations, it's much easier to handle it, as opposed to, "Oh, I'm sorry this has happened. Let me send you a book." They'd find that quite insulting, I would imagine. So
I think it's kind of about building the relationship and maintaining it over time, so that when something bad does happen, you know that, or the customer or your client knows that you are there for them, you care about them. Like, this isn't an intentional thing that has happened.
Absolutely. And a lot of businesses would say they're not a lot of businesses say they are customer centric, but it's the truly customer centric businesses that makes a difference. So when I worked for John Lewis, it's well known as a retailer to be very customer centric. People would be able to buy stuff in confidence, knowing that they have an issue with it. John Lewis would do something about it. And I think that is so important to establish your reputation as a customer centric business.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do, right? Like, there's different goals companies have, but if you want to be truly customer centric, you have to invest a lot of time and energy in that.
That makes sense. On the flip side, what strategies would you adopt to ensure that you acknowledge and thank your most loyal customers? So you mentioned the importance of the thank you gesture, but I suppose as a kind of proactive act before anything has gone wrong, what would you suggest that you do?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about your newer customers. So when they are new with you, so whatever type of business you own, that they're going to be in a very different position to your more tenured, established customers. So thinking about, like, actually from their perspective, what do they need from you? They need help when they need it the most. They might need some explaining on how to set up your tooling. Like, we've now just launched a small business team that really supports the onboarding of our new small businesses and helps them get set up in the right way. So you're establishing that, like, ground base off the get-go. And then that, for me, is as much acknowledging and thanking them for their business with us, because you're setting them up right from the start.
Yes.
And that would be quite different to how you would look at and acknowledge and appreciate your more tenured customers as well. So it's really thinking about how you differentiate that level of service. Your more tenured customers might want they probably come with more complex queries. They might want to be, actually, you put those in touch with your more experienced staff members.
Yes.
And more knowledgeable, because actually they don't want to be treated with the basics, because actually that's for your newer customers. So I think it's about how you tailor your approach depending on who those customers are.
Makes sense. I think it's a big part, obviously, of what we do at SIFT as well, as we sort of have, when people join SIFT, they can join onboarding webinars to learn how to use the tools.
Yeah.
And as you've been on for longer, you might want to attend webinars or do courses on more complex features and find out ways to do things that maybe someone who has just started using SIFT doesn't have time or isn't really interested in using.
Or it's too big of a step up, isn't
Yes.
it, for them?
So it's kind of having those different levels and seeing where you can adapt your approach to suit what the customer needs.
100%. And do you find that the customers who engage with your webinars, your newer customers who engage and stay with you longer? Would you say,
I
as
think
customers?
so. I feel like the customers who join those webinars and they start building a relationship with the people who are running these webinars, they definitely become more loyal. They're more willing to come onto the chat, for example, to ask questions. And I get to interview a lot of them for case studies where I ask them, what has your experience been? How did you find this? How did you find the onboarding? And it's always very positive because from the start, they had someone guiding them. And then as things became more complicated, they'll often say, I know I ask really difficult questions and I don't always expect an immediate answer or a quick solve for something, but there's always someone who's there who will listen to me and ask questions and follow up.
And they probably have a bit of more lenience because if you've got a really loyal customer, they're willing to wait. Yes. They know. Whereas if you've got somebody who might be new, you haven't onboarded them, and they'd immediately go into the mindset of frustration. Why can't I get hold of them? So actually building that loyalty and building that customer relationship with somebody is so important from the beginning, isn't it? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. For a small business owner, every complaint is a lesson. How do you move from reacting to a complaint to changing your mind to how can I fix this issue? What can I learn from this complaint?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the nature of the complaint. I'm just trying to picture what an example complaint could be for a small business owner. Maybe let's pick a restaurant and you've had a really, really poor complaint on the meal that you've experienced. So I think the first thing is dealing with that complaint there and then. So what are you going to do for that customer? And where you see companies do it really well, it's the acknowledging the poor experience they've received, what are you going to do to make it right in that situation? And then looking back and reflecting, actually, is there something that we could have done or should have done differently? Is it something wrong with our ingredients? Is this a meal that actually we've had multiple customers complain about? And really trying to fix that root cause of the issue. It may or may not be. It might have just been a customer who's had a bad day, in which case that's fine. And you're always going to get those as well. Yeah. But really understanding what is there more to this than what the customer's letting on?
Yeah, I think good advice. Would you agree that the feedback that you least want to hear from a customer is actually the feedback that you really need to hear?
I would agree with that. And I'll tell you why. So I'm a big fan of customer feedback surveys. In all the businesses I've worked, I've said, actually, we need to truly hear from our customers in order to change what we're going to do and make it better for them. So at Xero, I launched the survey, and what do I read? I read the negative feedback. Very rarely do I let myself look at the good. And why? Because what I'm trying to do is drive up that satisfaction score. And the only way to drive it up is look at your dissatisfied customers and fix what the issues are with your dissatisfied customers. And if you don't have that information, when I've launched these surveys, your score is relatively low, so you can turn it around so quickly. So we've had for 6 months, we've been able to increase it by 7%. Oh, wow. Why? Because we've known what the problems are for our customers who aren't happy. So it makes it so much easier to plan. We've changed the way that we've delivered our support service. We've listened to what the product issues are. So it really is almost like a free tool to really understand, how do we generate that loyalty with our customers? And there's some stat out there around each % of CSAT gain you make, a customer satisfaction score, translates to an X amount of revenue. So It really does bring financial rewards to your business as well by understanding what your customers are saying.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, everything you're doing is for your customers. So if you want them to keep coming back for more, you have to keep them happy.
100%.
But I think you have to get your head around being able to look at those negative comments and think about them in terms of, okay, how can I use this to help my business?
Exactly. It's looking at the negative in a positive way. And the other thing that we do is whenever we receive a negative survey, we always call that customer. So if that survey didn't exist, we wouldn't know. They'd go away unhappy and then they'd tell their 7 friends. But for the majority of the time, I'd say for 9 out of 10 situations, we're able to turn that around. So we make sure within 2 days they've left the review. Within 2 days of that review landing, we will speak to that customer and understand, actually, how can I make this better for you? What went wrong? And that it's incredible how many situations you can turn it around by just simply picking up the phone.
Yeah, I think just having that little bit of effort that you've put in to follow up with them.
Yes. And it can be nerve-wracking at first if you've got a really negative public review and the threat of I'm going to go to X, Y, and Z, or some people would avoid making that phone call, and I can understand that.
Yes.
But chances are, like I said, 9 times out of 10, you'd be able to turn that experience around. So it's worth that effort up front.
Yeah, you actually have a lot more power in this situation than many people might think.
Yes. Yeah, well, you're the one making that outbound call. It's much better to do that than hear it kind of coming in from your customers. Definitely.
You were talking about CSAT now, which is customer satisfaction.
That's correct, yeah.
And the other score you mentioned was NPS?
Net Promoter Score.
Could you maybe break these down and what the differences are?
Sure. So Net Promoter Score generally sits under the questions, how likely would you be to recommend your products and services? And it's on a score of 1 to 10, and you measure it based on promoters and detractors. So this typically would be used if you're looking at it as a company as a whole. So not looking at something specific, but how likely are people to recommend you, and gives you a general score on what your customers are feeling about you as your product or services. Customer satisfaction we use for more targeted, how satisfied were you with the experience you received today?
Okay.
Or the product that you purchased today. And within those types of questions, you can really get down into things like, there's another, we call it customer effort, which is how easy was your interaction today? And you could ask all sorts of questions such as, are you happy with the speed? How satisfied were? And it's all levels of satisfaction. And so that's generally scored on a 0 to 5, from least satisfied to very satisfied. And then you'd calculate that as a percentage. Both valuable, lots of different ways to measure satisfaction out there. They aren't just the only two, but very commonly used in the industry.
And as a small business owner or as an accountant, how would you recommend that they go about running these surveys? Or should they be running surveys? Should they be asking for reviews? What should they be doing to get more customer feedback that can help them?
Yeah, so if I was a small business accountant, I would probably recommend both in terms of asking for public reviews. But I would also be doing the surveys. Why? Because the surveys will give you a really great snapshot of all your customers. Like I said in the beginning, you want to hear that negative feedback.
Yes.
But what you don't necessarily want is that negative feedback publicly posted on review sites.
No.
So the benefit, and you wouldn't need to go, necessarily survey every single one of your customers. But what you notice is some businesses really they'll send you the email after the interaction saying, we'd love to hear from you, give us a review, or we'd love to hear from you and give us a survey. And there's no real right or wrong. I guess it depends what your overall goal is. If you're a brand new business and you want to attract people to come and shop with you, or get your hair cut with you, you probably want to err more towards getting those public positive reviews to get more people to come in. But as you get more experience and you really want to understand what you want to do to improve, then the surveys is a great option as well. And there's lots of different websites that offer surveys. It doesn't cost a great deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even use a Google form, and that works reasonably well.
Better.
Very easy to set up. You could probably put in a customer survey in Google form and have a template for you. So yeah, you could. There's really lots of ways you can go about it.
What's the number one mistake that you think businesses make when they're responding to a review?
I think you said it in the beginning about being defensive. And I'm thinking of when I plan my trips or I'm planning my holidays, I often go on to review sites to see and I'm not necessarily looking for the reviews that the customers wrote. I'm looking for how the businesses responded to those reviews. How have they handled that review?
Yes.
And I think sometimes, and you can read through the lines like, oh, I've had a terrible experience in a hotel. The air conditioning wasn't working. Well, sir, you also checked out late and left the room. And you just read those and think, oh gosh, that is not how you would want to respond to a public review. So I think being really careful about the wording that you're choosing when you are responding, and not just assuming that everybody can read the first person's review and know that customer's probably a bit of a pain.
Yes.
You don't need to explain that publicly. That customer was a bit of a pain. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's definitely a case where you need to not respond instantly, You need like to sleep on it, just relax a little bit.
You might want to type your response, what you really wanted to type, and just type something different.
Send what you really wanted to say to someone else in the organization.
Exactly.
And then have a polite, calm response that is publicly facing.
Yeah. And Gemini can help with that as well. I mean, I found Gemini to be more empathetic than some of the people that work with me. So, you can definitely get some help out there. You're not alone if you're trying to.
Gemini is very understanding.
Yeah, Gemini is.
So that's a great segue into our rapid fire segment.
Okay, rapid fire.
It's time for you to answer questions very quickly. I said great segue because the first question is, what's one piece of software, apart from Xero and Sift, that you can't live without?
Well, now it probably is Gemini. I mean, we are Google Suite, so I've done the recent, I think it's the LM, where it pulls in information from all your documents and gives you a summary or a video or a podcast. That's been really cool. I've been experimenting with that over the last couple of weeks.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. It saves so much time, doesn't it?
Yeah, Gemini is amazing.
Yeah.
Summarizing things for you, explaining, complicated paragraphs that you're not quite sure what's going on.
Well, actually, I use it for my voice of the customer. I put in all the reviews and feedback, tell me themes of what I'm experiencing, and you can put thousands of data points in there. So yeah, it's very time saver.
What's the best book you've read recently, or the best podcast you've listened to?
Oh, that's a tough one. I do like my travel podcasts. What's the best one? I've actually been listening to, I think it's Women in Travel. So it's like two women talking about their experiences in different countries, and you can hear them, and you can hear they talk from the country that they're in. So if they're going out to eat, and just the way they're describing all the food, I love it, because if I drive to work, I'm transported to that country. For that moment, I'm listening to the podcast, and I was explaining to you earlier, Alex, I've got a long drive to work, so it's really nice to be able to kind of just get lost in those travel podcasts while I'm listening to these two women talking about their experiences.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Definitely adding to my list of podcasts to listen to. What's the best lesson that you've learned about building a business?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Or a lesson.
A lesson, yes, I know. So I don't want to just keep going on about listening to your customers, because that's what we've talked about all this time. So probably just, not being really clear on what you want to get out of your business. I talk about balancing three things: customer, people, and profit. And that actually always thinking about, where do you want to put your emphasis? A lot of companies, I think, can be focused on one of those three, but to the detriment of the other. So I think always thinking about how you keep those three in check. If you can keep your customers happy, your profits will come. If you can keep your people happy, they're likely to keep your customers happy. So I was thinking kind of those 3 points of the triangle, and how you balance those three overall metrics.
Oh, fantastic. And last question, if someone was not paying attention to the whole podcast and they only took away one key thing, what would you want that to be?
It's got to be listen to your customers. And that's what we've pretty much talked about in 3 words, right? And there's always a place to listen to your customers, but really listen, because actually there's the insight is invaluable, what you'll learn from that, and what you even can do and change your business and adapt.
Yes. And I think also listen with empathy was something that really came across strongly.
Yeah.
They are also just people who might be having a bad day.
100%.
We're dealing with many other things.
Most people are, aren't they?
Yeah.
You don't know what happened on someone's commute to work or going on in their lives. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast, Melanie.
That's okay. It's been great. Love talking to you. Thanks, Alex.
Awesome. And this is our first official podcast from Milton Keynes. Hopefully there will be many more in future. Thank you to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast. Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now. And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast. That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.